Hello, dear viewer, and thank you for joining me on day 16 of reading the Bible together. Today we are reading Genesis chapter 32 and 33 from the Old Testament, as well as Matthew chapter 11 verse 1 to 24 from the New Testament. Let's start. Genesis chapter 32. Jacob prepares to meet Esau. As Jacob went on his way, some angels met him. When he saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he named the place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the country of Edom. He instructed them to say, "I, Jacob, your obedient servant, report to my master Esau that I have been staying with Laban, and that I have delayed my return until now. I own cattle, donkeys, sheep, goats, and slaves. I am sending you word, sir, in hope of gaining your favor." When the messengers came back to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and he is already on his way to meet you. He has 400 men with him." Jacob was frightened and worried. He divided into two groups the people who were with him, and also his sheep, goats, cattle, and camels. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks the first group, the other may be able to escape. Then Jacob prayed, "God of my grandfather Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, hear me. You told me, Lord, to go back to my land and to my relatives, and you would make everything go well for me. I am not worth all the kindness and faithfulness that you have shown me, your servant. I crossed the Jordan with nothing but a walking stick, and now I have come back with these two groups. Save me, I pray, from my brother Esau. I am afraid that he is coming to attack us and destroy us all, even the women and children. Remember that you promised to make everything go well for me, and to give me more descendants than anyone could count, as many as the grains of sand along the seashore." After spending the night there, Jacob chose from his livestock as a present for his brother Esau 200 female goats and 20 males, 200 female sheep and 20 males, 30 milk camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 males. He divided them into herds and put one of his servants in charge of each herd. He said to them, "Go ahead of me and leave a space between each herd and the one behind it." He ordered the first servant, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, 'Who is your master? Where are you going? Who owns these animals in front of you?' you must answer, 'They belong to your servant Jacob. He sends them as a present to his master Esau. Jacob himself is right behind us." He gave the same order to the second, the third, and to all the others who were in charge of the herds. "This is what you must say to Esau when you meet him. You must say, 'Yes, your servant Jacob is right behind us.'" Jacob was thinking, "I will win him over with the gifts, and when I meet him, perhaps he will forgive me." He sent the gifts on ahead of him and spent that night in camp. Jacob wrestles at Peniel. That same night, Jacob got up, took his 2 wives, his 2 concubines, and his 11 children, and crossed the Jacob River. After he had sent them across, he also sent across all that he owned, but he stayed behind, alone. Then a man came and wrestled with him until just before daybreak. When the man saw that he was not winning the struggle, he hit Jacob on the hip, and it was thrown out of joint. The man said, "Let me go, daylight is coming." "I won't unless you bless me," Jacob answered. "What is your name?" the man asked. "Jacob," he answered. The man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob. You have struggled with God and with men, and you have won, so your name will be Israel." Jacob said, "Now tell me your name." But he answered, "Why do you want to know my name?" Then he blessed Jacob. Jacob said, "I have seen God face to face, and I am still alive. So he named the place Peniel. The sun rose as Jacob was leaving Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Even today, the descendants of Israel do not eat the muscle which is on the hip joint, because it was on this muscle that Jacob was hit. Genesis chapter 33. Jacob meets Esau. Jacob saw Esau coming with his 400 men, so he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 concubines. He put the concubines and their children first, then Leah and her children, and finally Rachel and Joseph at the rear. Jacob went ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. They were both crying. When Esau looked around and saw the woman and the children, he asked, "Who are these people with you?" "These, sir, are the children whom God has been good enough to give me," Jacob answered. Then the concubines came up with their children and bowed down. Then Leah and her children came, and last of all Joseph and Rachel came and bowed down. Esau asked, "What about that other group I met? What did that mean?" Jacob answered, "It was to gain your favor." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have." Jacob said, "No, please. If I have gained your favor, accept my gift. To see your face is for me like seeing the face of God. Now that you have been so friendly to me, please accept this gift which I have brought for you. God has been kind to me and given me everything I need." Jacob kept on urging him until he accepted. Esau said, "Let's get ready and leave. I will go ahead of you." Jacob answered, "You know that the children are weak, and I must think of the sheep and livestock with their young. If they are driven hard for even one day, the whole herd will die. Please go on ahead of me, and I will follow slowly, going as fast as I can with the livestock and the children until I catch up with you in Edom." Esau said, "Then let me leave some of my men with you." But Jacob answered, "There is no need for that, for I only want to gain your favor." So that day Esau started on his way back to Edom. But Jacob went to Succoth, where he built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock. That is why the place was named Succoth. On his return from Mesopotamia, Jacob arrived safely at the city of Shechem in the land of Canaan, and set up his camp in a field near the city. He bought that part of the field from the descendants of Hamor, father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver. He put up an altar there and named it for El, the God of Israel. Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. Let's continue. Matthew chapter 11 verse 1 to 24. The messengers from John the Baptist. When Jesus finished giving these instructions to his 12 disciples, he left that place and went off to teach and preach in the towns near there. When John the Baptist heard in prison about the things that Christ was doing, he sent some of his disciples to him. "Tell us," they asked Jesus, "are you the one John said was going to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus answered, "Go back and tell John what you are hearing and seeing. The blind can see, the lame can walk. Those who suffer from dreaded skin diseases are made clean. The deaf hear, the dead are brought back to life, and the good news is preached to the poor. How happy are those who have no doubts about me." While John's disciples were leaving, Jesus spoke about him to the crowds. "When you went out to John in the desert, what did you expect to see? A blade of grass bending in the wind? What did you go out to see? A man dressed up in fancy clothes? People who dress like that live in palaces. Tell me, what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, indeed, but you saw much more than a prophet. For John is the one whom the scripture says, 'God said, I will send my messenger ahead of you to open the way for you.' I assure you that John the Baptist is greater than anyone who has ever lived. but the one who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than John. From the time John preached his message until this very day, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violent attacks, and violent men try to seize it. Until the time of John, all the prophets and the law of Moses spoke about the kingdom, and if you are willing to believe their message, John is Elijah, whose coming was predicted. Listen then, if you have ears. Now, to what can I compare the people of this day? They are like children sitting in the marketplace. One group shouts to the other, "We played wedding music for you, but you wouldn't dance. We sang funeral songs, but you wouldn't cry." When John came, he fasted and drank no wine, and everyone said, "He has a demon in him." When the Son of Man came, he ate and drank, and everyone said, "Look at this man, he is a glutton and wine drinker, a friend of tax collectors and other outcasts." God's wisdom, however, is shown to be true by its results. The unbelieving towns. The people in the towns where Jesus had performed most of his miracles did not turn from their sins, so he reproached those towns. "How terrible it will be for you, Chorazin! How terrible for you too, Bethsaida! If the miracles which were performed in you had been performed in Tyre and Sidon, the people there would have long ago put on sackcloth and sprinkled ashes on themselves to show that they had turned from their sins. I assure you that on the judgment day, God will show more mercy to the people of Tyre and Sidon than to you. And as for you, Capernaum, did you want to lift yourself up to heaven? You will be thrown down to hell. If the miracles which were performed in you had been performed in Sodom, it would still be in existence today. You can be sure that on Judgment Day, God will show more mercy to Sodom than to you. Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. That's it for today, and I hope that you'll join me in the next video. Wishing you a graceful morning, day, or evening.